Do you know, like having a conversation with a child from the ages of 5th grade to high school, I challenge you to see how long they can hold eye contact with you. It's uncomfortable. It's physically uncomfortable because they're not used to, like the way they consume and the way they look at their screen, it's changing the way they connect, they communicate, they consume, all of it.
What's up, what's up, what's up? Welcome to the AlignUs podcast, a transformative journey into the worlds of wellness and philanthropy. I'm your host, Dr. Nikhil Sharma, and I'm so grateful to have you guys here with us today. Let's get this podcast started. I'm super excited to be joined by Annabelle Williamson. Very, very grateful to have you on the AlignUs podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Right on. And we have a really interesting and I feel like a controversial topic today about social media citizenship and the use of social media with our children and in the school. There's just so much great stuff, so much to talk about. But you know how that is impacting our youth. So before we get into it, can we hear a little bit about your background and your professional history?
Yeah, so my name is Annabelle. I go by La Maestra Loca, which means the crazy teacher in Spanish. I teach Spanish. My certification is K through 12. I currently teach 4th and 5th grade, but the majority of my experience is with middle school. I've taught elementary, middle, and high in public, private, independent, charter, pretty much everything except for college. And I'm currently teaching in Orleans Parish at a school called Morris Jeff Community School, and I'm super happy there.
Awesome. All right. Well, you know, this topic of social media is something that's been a little bit of a hot topic. You know, growing up in the 90s, there was no social media. I think for me, it first started with MySpace, and I want to say I was in college at that time. And then, you know, Facebook came around, and really when I was in medical school, that's kind of when that whole process started being implemented. But now, man, it's exploded.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Speaking of MySpace, I had a middle schooler find my 13-year-old MySpace page a couple of years ago. I was like, how did you find that? I don't even know how to find that. But yeah, it is. Can you imagine like the pressure that kids feel growing up with social media right now? Like the extreme pressure to be a certain way. I mean, 8 years ago, I was teaching middle school, and I remember having a conversation with kids, and they came into class. This is going to blow your mind. I didn't even have this conversation with you before. Like they came into class, and I had this group of girls who said like, how are you doing, maestra? How are you feeling? And I was like, I'm fine. I'm doing good. How are you? And they were like, oh, okay, we were really worried. And I said, why? And they said, well, your post that you made yesterday only got 40 likes by the end of last night. But they were I'm telling you, these girls were so deeply concerned and serious. They have they had, I don't know if this is still the general consensus, but an understanding that if your post within the first 10 hours didn't get 80 likes, you take it down. Like you don't want it to be seen. It's not good enough. It's not, at that time, I immediately launched into like, I'm gonna do a selfie mini unit on selfie tourism, and like I based it around like animals and the dangers of taking animal selfies, but really wanted to like get a deeper understanding of like kids' interaction with social media. And we did a survey of the school all the way through high school, and kids on average were taking between 80 and 150 selfies a day.
Oh my God.
And that was 8 years ago. Selfies, like this obsession of like with image and with like identity and with presence and with like, and the snap, like sometimes it snaps back and forth. Sometimes it's like this streak, like going with my 8th graders on a trip and then being like, oh, no. What do you mean we can't have cell phones for a week? I'll lose my snap streak. Like all these things that like, for them, like we want to dismiss it like, oh yeah, okay, your snap streak. But for them, it's like literally part of who they are. And this device in their hand, it is like, you don't say, give me your phone. That's not something you say. It's like, it's part of their identity. Yeah. And it's this really hard, challenging climate to live in right now, and to be a teacher in, and to raise kids in, for sure.
I mean, it's gotten to became such an issue, so much so that the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, he has released a warning, kind of like a warning that they put on the cigarette boxes when, it was found that cigarettes cause lung cancer. He has issued a similar warning about the effects of social media and our youth's mental health.
Yep.
So they're noticing over the past several years that our youth mental health is continuing to decline. There's higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety, and they've been able to tie that to social media and social media use, which is extremely, sad, because of course, I think we all can believe and know that social media was initially created to help keep us more connected, right? To help us either reconnect with old friends or to keep us informed of what our friends are doing, right? And that's a beautiful thing, because obviously we don't want to be lonely, but it's an interesting dichotomy of what happens when we're seeing posts on social media. It can make us feel like we don't have enough, and cause our mental state to decline. And so this warning has been issued, and it's kind of serious. What are your thoughts about that and what you're seeing on a daily basis with your students, and wondering if you're noticing worsening depression, anxiety, and based on like social media and likes and those types of things?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Even a student's ability to focus for a period of time, like, it has decreased dramatically since social media, because if you think about the way that kids consume things, it's honestly in 15 to 30 second chunks. It's TikTok, right? So it's like they're consuming things in 15 seconds at a time, and sometimes way less. So if it's not interesting, they're like, whoop, 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 right? So their ability to sustain attention, their ability to have eye contact, like having a conversation with a child from the ages of 5th grade to high school, I challenge you to see how long they can hold eye contact with you. It's uncomfortable. It's physically uncomfortable because they're not used to, like, the way they consume and the way they look at their screen. It's changing the way they connect, they communicate, they consume, all of it. So, yes, we're seeing it in schools. Another thing that we're seeing it hugely impact schools right now is like there are very few schools with the financial tools available to make cell phone, like I have some kids in this city who I know went on to high school and their cell phones had to be put up in a locker at the beginning of the day, or they were collected by a security guard, put in a safe place, and they collected them at the end of the day. Oh, that would be dreamy. But the reality is most schools, kids have them on them all the time. They have them on them all the time. What that is exposing is what we talked about in an earlier episode. You're seeing a window into what we are doing and what we are dealing with in schools, and the apathy, the disrespect, all of that is very real. So yes, it's a window in, and for that I'm thankful in a way. But I remember 2 years ago, there was a TikTok challenge going on, and I was as an educator, I was like, how is it that TikTok is still happening when this just happened? There was a TikTok challenge where one of the first days was like slap a teacher challenge, and it was literally, I'm serious. There was a challenge to where, and I bet our high school student in there remembers, but literally students were tasked with slapping a teacher, catching it on footage, or like a friend catching it and then posting it on TikTok. The next day was steal from a teacher challenge. The next day was take the doors off the stalls in the bathroom challenge. The next day was like destroy some part of the school challenge. Like, there were so many, and it was day after day after day, and I was like, how is this still happening? We had tons of teachers slapped in our building at the time, and I was like, I stopped. That's one of those days where I stopped class and I was like, hey, we're gonna talk about this. What could possibly make you think that this is, but it's the peer pressure of doing something, being seen, doing the next trend. And I had kids say, no, Maestra, it's not you, you're cool, we're good with you, like, it's not gonna be you. And I said, you should not be touching an educator who is giving their life to teaching you and helping you and wanting you to succeed. I don't care if it's me or somebody else in this building. do not do this. Like how is this even a conversation we are having to have? But the reality is like they are so meldable and what's the word? I'm looking for a word. Like they're so
impressionable.
Thank you. That's the word I want. They're so impressionable, and social media is the thing right now that they are learning, consuming, and trying to impress, trying to all these things. So like, are you involved in your kids' account? Like if you have kids, are you in there looking at what they're seeing? Are you like, because if you look at the CEOs, CFOs of all these big companies, of all of the
social media,
all the social media, none of their kids have them, and none of their kids have devices. What does that tell you?
It's like there was a show on Netflix I remember watching recently, and they talked about how all the CEOs and all of the developers of those apps, none of them allow their kids to actually have social media, because they understand what it's used for, how people are being manipulated in a way to think a certain way, and so there's just so much that goes behind these platforms that people aren't really aware of, and nor do they have time to be aware of it. And that's that's another big issue, is what I've noticed is with parents, is that they're very busy. They have a lot that's going on right now, and so what they will do is that they don't have enough time necessarily with their kids, and they'll put a device in front of their child, and they'll be like, oh, I just use this for several hours and watch this movie, or it's a lot of times it's not monitored, so those kids will just jump on, get onto YouTube, get onto Facebook, and then right? And I've literally walked into a room, and for those that aren't able to see me, but I see them with their iPad in front of them, looking like zombies, and it's like they're just being entrenched into whatever is being taught right in front of them. Like there's no disturbing or distracting them. Like once that device is in front of them and that social media platform is on, man, it's a sight that's scary, to be honest. I was like taken back. I'm like, wow, this is where they're getting learning from, and it's like it's starting from there. Like
they're so real, and that's something that like I'm not shaming. I don't want to parent shame at all. Like we all I have days where I'm like, oh, Memphis, it was a long day. Go ahead and watch an hour and a half of Peppa Pig. Enjoy. But we get compliments all the time on our kids in restaurants that they don't watch an iPad the whole time we're at a restaurant. Like we don't have iPads. I bought iPads for the first time ever today because we're going on a 10-hour road trip, but I've refused because I know I've seen firsthand as a teacher how kids interact. Grocery stores are one of the most overstimulating places you can go as a child, and I, right now, am one of the few parents I see walking through a grocery store with my child not on a device, on a phone or an iPad. And I just think yes, 100%, our lives are insane. We are busy. We are exhausted. We are more overworked. Our generation is more exhausted than ever. The temptation is huge to just set them in front of that. But this is going to be my challenge at the end. There's a show I want you to watch. Children are losing their ability to create. They are losing their ability to imagine. They're losing their ability to be bored. They don't know how to be bored. And what this is going to cause, beyond just the eye contact and the communication, the inability to be creative and just do something because you have nothing to do, to take a piece of paper and create a rocket ship or whatever the heck. Yeah. It's going to be huge.
Because boredom, as you know, inspires innovation.
Yes.
Remember that. Boredom inspires innovation. And so when you're not able to sit with yourself and you feel like you always have to be constantly stimulated, we're going to lose such great and powerful inventions, whether it comes in technology, whether it comes in music, whatever have you may be, a lot of that comes from boredom. And you're right. And what's also happening, and I've noticed, is that more and more kids are being diagnosed with ADHD, which has become such a big deal in the US because we are now like the highest producer and consumer of a drug called Adderall. And you know, it causes, and at such a young age, the problem is that these devices and these social media and constant stimulation and moving up and down and scrolling and all this, it causes our brain wires to be wired in a different way. And that causes us to be not able to pay attention to the things that we're doing. And then we can develop things like ADHD. Then we have to be on medications when they can simply this can all be stopped from somehow, you know, getting some citizenship behind our devices, you know.
100%.
And we have some power behind that, right? Because there is some good that comes from using social media.
So much. There's so much good. I use it in my classroom. So one of the things, I know now I'm being like a direct hypocrite, but I use TikTok and Instagram in my classroom because I want to teach digital citizenship in my classroom. I want to teach kids how to consume more responsibly. And I also know that that's where they're going to be like interested, right? That's how I'm going to hook them, because that's where they are interested outside of school. I know that's how they're spending their time outside of school. So if I say, and I am not ever going to be cool in my middle school or high schooler's eyes, like I'm just not cool, and that's okay. But TikTok is cool, Instagram is cool, the people on those platforms are cool. So if I say, hey y'all, I saw something on TikTok I wanted to show you, all of a sudden all eyes are up and they're like, wait, what? They're interested. I have them hooked. So then I show the video, right? If I can show the video and do so in a responsible way, I screen record, because you can't control captions and you can't control live language that may come up. I want to be careful about that, but I screen record, I show the video, and then I am able to interact with them and talk to them about what they're noticing, what do they see, and really use it as an educational tool in a way that, and maybe like exposing them to other people's, other cultures, other identities, right? That like is so important when we talk about like, how are we showing representation in our school? Are we showing diverse images of people, of genders, of backgrounds, of socioeconomic backgrounds, of racial backgrounds, like all these different things? Like social media is a phenomenal, the best tool for that, for exposing kids to other identities and other peoples around the world, and really building empathy and curiosity for other cultures and other peoples. Like, what a powerful tool that I have. And then those kids will go and follow those accounts and like learn more on their own time outside. Like, that's the power. But it's also like, how do we teach it responsibly? How do we talk to them about their use? And one of the things that I did personally, and this may help you if I have ADHD, I often, like, when I'm in a bad place with my ADHD, I'll find myself in a black hole, like scrolling, consuming myself, and then hours are gone and I'm like, what has just happened?
No, you're in a rabbit hole. Yeah.
Right, but like having a time journal and literally tracking how many minutes, like literally by minutes, for 3 days, even if you can do it. Keep a journal of everything you do and how many minutes you spend on it. And I did this like a couple years ago, and I realized I was horrified. And I pride myself on like not doing too much screen time, not being on social. I was spending, when I calculated it all, including all the minutes at night and when I'm scrolling or early in the morning, whatever, I was spending more time on Instagram alone than I was with my kids. Like,
yeah, it's a big deal.
What?
For sure.
So like getting your kids to do that and seeing how many hours, multiply it. Okay, if that's 3 days, how many days in a week, how many weeks in a month, how many, like what could you do? I could write a book. Yeah. I could write a book, 3 books, based on how much time I'm spending. If I cut my Instagram in half. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like what could you do with that time?
For the teachers out there, take a look at Annabelle's website, www.𝐦𝐸𝐴LLOCA.com. You will find great resources and services available to you. Annabelle also has a growing podcast called Teaching La Vida Loca that you can find on her website as well as Spotify. So make sure you check that out. You can also follow AlignUs on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok with the handle at @AlignUsWorld. And to energetically donate to the YouTube channel, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. It'd be greatly appreciated. Remember, that as a large collective of positive energy, we can help awaken each other to live our best lives. Now back to our podcast. Yeah, and one thing I know that I've implemented, in my use of social media, because again, it's not going anywhere. This is, and just like Annabelle said, it can be used in such a powerful way. But what I've realized is when I'm waking up in the morning and I'm starting my day, I used to, first thing, what do most people, do? Roll over, take a look. I open up Twitter usually, and then I start scrolling through the feeds. And what do I see? I see all this, hodgepodge of like fights, hate, fear that just starts, that jumps right out at me. And I am already in a state of heightened anxiety, like, oh my God, I'm going outside. I'm just waking up today. My emotions are heightened. And what people don't understand, their scientific background of what happens when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol hormones start going up, and that causes your heart rate to start increasing. And that's what helps wake us up in the morning. There's certain hormones that do that. Now imagine mixing those wake-up hormones with anxiety-driven, images or videos. Mm-hmm. You are just not, your heart rate's going to go up even higher, right? And that's anxiety, right? So, based on just what our physiology of our human body does, waking up in the morning, is already expending a lot of energy. You want to try to keep that to just, yourself and not ingest any other energy that, can disrupt the flow of waking up in the morning, and I noticed since I've implemented that, and I typically don't look at social media for at least 2 to 3 hours after I wake up, that I've kind of allowed my brain to, re-equilibrate to how it's supposed to be, and then I can be more intentional at that point about how my day is going to be, because I don't have those fear emotions that usually get created by looking through social media, what's happening, what my friend is doing, while I'm waking up. And it's a real, physiological thing that occurs within us. So, just as an advice, start right there. And with your kids, like, don't allow them, to take a look at their social media or have their phone, depending on their age, until maybe they've gotten up, gotten ready, for school, and, maybe headed to school, but not necessarily first thing in the morning, because, just based on how your body functions, you're already in a more hyper state, and social media just adds to that.
Yeah. I think also, like, I know that you usually say this to the end, but I'm like, we must be close there. Yeah. There's a movie called Screenagers that my whole school was required to watch. And this is a school I worked at years and years ago. But we were all required as a faculty to watch it, and then we watched it with kids, and then we made it a requirement for families to watch. And it like directly and immediately impacted how much screen time kids were getting. They were mad. They were not happy with us. But like the actual physical, I'm not a doctor. Oh, here it goes. Like whatever the brain's wiring is changing. Like freaking dramatically because of screens, just screens. Like forget social media, like screens alone are so deeply like changing the wiring of our brains and how we function and how we're coping with things. Yes. We talked in our first episode about like having a short fuse. All of that is directly impacted by how much screen time we have. And so like the first challenge I have for you is watch Screenagers, and then the second is like really consider like what is a time limit that you can set for like screen time for your kids, and then be intentional with your usage. I'm not shaming you as a parent, like you're gonna need that time, I need that time. So how can you be intentional about like making it at a time of day that you know you're going to need it and they're going to benefit from it? When they're exhausted, you're exhausted. I don't know.
No, you're right. And it's going to be with us for the rest of our life, our kids' life. There's going to be more of those platforms, that are going to be, that come out, that are going to have more images and disturbing videos, whatever. But we can be in control of that, and that's the whole thing. Is well, as parents, you have to empathize with yourself and be compassionate about, hey, you need your own alone time too, and sometimes that is the best way, is to kind of give a device to your kid to kind of watch a movie, and that's okay. But it's about the rest of the time and how often are they on their screens. That's something that we can be controlling, and something that we have power over. And then, for the students that are growing up, that are going through this time period, you may not realize this now, but there certainly is an impact that's already been studied, and that's what the Surgeon General came out letting us know. It has a huge impact on our mental health. Yeah. So, use it for all the right reasons. Just be mindful of how you're using it, and how it's affecting you. If you realize that it's affecting you in a negative way, then sometimes it's good to take a break from it, get off of social media for a while. I've had to do that numerous times, because I realized that, I can't be seeing all this right now, and I need just some time to myself to get myself together and get my mental situation better, and then I'll come back more empowered and ready to tackle that and go forward.
And that's so empowering for kids too. Like if you are modeling it for them, you're empowering them to make those same choices. Like when I'm sitting at the end of the day, and I'm like, we've done it so much less lately, but I realized, like, my husband and I, we would put the kids to bed, and then there's like this moment of crash where you're like, oh my God, Bluey has still been on for an hour, where the kids are both in bed, but Bluey is still on, and we're sitting here scrolling on our phones. Bluey is an amazing cartoon. You're looking at me funny. Bluey is an amazing cartoon. It's for kids and parents. No, it's better than all of it. It's from Australia. But like we're sitting there and we're scrolling on our phones instead of having these valuable moments of connection. Like, how are you modeling for them what you ultimately know will empower them in their futures and be better for their mental and emotional health? Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into the AlignUs podcast, where we inspire a world of wellness and philanthropy. You can connect with Annabelle on her Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Threads account at 𝐦𝐨𝐫𝐞, or find inspiration through her website and blog, www.𝐦𝐨𝐫𝐞.com. She also has a growing podcast called Teaching La Vida Loca. For more resources and events, and to stay connected to the AlignUs app release, visit our website at www.alignusworld.com. You can also follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok pages with the handle at AlignUsWorld. Until we meet again, stay aligned, stay connected, and stay anchored into the power of unconditional love. Namaste.